the possibility of only denominating portions of the order precedential, and I kind of walked through the discussion that I had on the record about what features come from the different aspects of the order. And the initial recommendation I would have, based on my conversation with Board Member Doduk, is to include a footnote that would be dropped on the board order number on page 1 that would indicate that everything in this order is precedential except for the portion of the nutrients discussion that begins with cultural eutrophication on page 29 of the change sheet version of the document that's in the back of the room, and continuing up through the public notice section, and then the rest of it would be precedential as well. So language that would reflect that is a new footnote that would be footnote number 1 on the first page of the document, again attached to the order number, that would say, except for the discussion in the nitrates parenthetical nutrients close paren section that begins with cultural eutrophication on page 29 and continues up to public notice on page 39, comma, this order is precedential, period. And that would address some of the concerns raised about the board's intent with NNE and nutrients going forward, but also some of the zone of reasonableness that seemed to be a source of angst for some. Obviously, that discussion would still be in this order for purposes of resolving the board's own motion review of this particular matter, but the regional boards would not look to it as precedential guidance as they move forward with their own permitting decisions.
And that certainly gets me into my zone of comfort. Thank you, Mr. Laufer.
We went through the mixing process. Felicia, you have more comments? If you don't, one of you is going to have to make a motion.
I'm sorry, before you do that, I have a quick addendum. One thing I forgot to mention was a final comment on the district's letter regarding outstanding evidentiary issues. If you'll remember back at the July workshop, there was a rather lengthy, I believe about 19, list of 19 documents that various parties wanted added into the record. And Mr. Simmons had wanted us to address that. And our basic response is that anything that we did accept into the record has been officially noticed within the order itself in a footnote for each instance that we did accept. For example, 2 additional CDPH studies. Any other piece of requested, any request additions to the record that have not been addressed are not included in the record. That was it, sorry. Just needed to get that on the record.
Was that clear to all of you? It wasn't horribly clear to me, but my hearing's not very good.
No, but I was thinking of something else. I have another question, though. Can you talk to me a little bit about the metals issue that CSPA raised? I mean, when is the time that that'll be looked at? I mean, aren't we looking at metals, some of the metals issues that we'd be able to incorporate into the next version of this permit? And then what impact does this permit's treatment level have on that now?
So the issue of the metals is how you determine hardness to determine the protective number.
Right.
And basically there are a couple of different ways. There have been a couple of papers that talk about whether you can, how to determine it. And one of them requires higher math, so it excludes James, as he says. And we are working, because it has been raised and this board has, in a number of other orders, said, directed staff to actually make the change to the SIP. We are working with the cadmium policy, which is an active policy. So I have staff working on that now. So I would suspect within about a year or so, maybe even earlier than that, because we've had quite a bit done already, that we'll be able to have the actual, with this metal, use this methodology. It's not completely straightforward because depending on the toxicity curve, it depends on how you determine the hardness. So there's 2 different methodologies for the metals, and don't ask me to list them off the top of my head because I can't. But that's the issue. So we are working on that. There have been a couple of peer-reviewed papers that have been out, and we're looking at using that methodology.
And so when we get to that point, we will then take whatever we do in that in particular and start applying it in permit, or we'll have the regional boards apply it in permit renewals as they get to it.
Right, so it would be part of the water quality standards at that point. It would say, you know, in determining hardness for this list of metals, use this methodology. It'd be we're hoping it'll be very straightforward as far as which methodology to use with which metal, because the curve of the toxicity itself matters in coming up with a protective level, whether it's a concave or convex curve.
Yeah.
With that, I'll move for adoption of this item with the change sheet with the, I think it was 2 or 3 minor additions that Mr. Herrick made, and with the additional language that Mr. Laufer just read with respect to a footnote regarding precedents.
I will second the motion.
Any further discussion?
Yeah, just a few thoughts on it, and it's certainly not complete. I mean, I think that I think actually staff's done a nice job, and I appreciate all the hard work that's gone into it at the regional board and here, and I appreciate the strong feelings as well as the professional pride of the district and the true concern of the environmental party. So I think we're in a position where the question is really, is this a reasonable or the right standard of review of what was done? And I find it, while I might want more explained from a public policy standpoint, if we could go back and rewrite, I might want a lot more written. But I think if I asked for a delay, all you would get is more comfort language in there, which might be helpful, but probably isn't essential to what it is we're trying to do. So I suppose I'm saying this in a plea that on these things that are like, let's talk earlier than we have, because it took me a while to digest this as much as I might have liked, and I'll take my responsibility for not spending more time on it. But I do think that there's value in that explanation. That said, it just seems that given the nature of the unusual place this is, the fact that what's required by the regional board isn't more than is being required all over the place for facilities of this size and type. This is where it's going in the future, and others are already there on both grounds, so it's not an unreasonable place to be going. In fact, not going there is probably what would be unreasonable. So I'm comfortable with us doing this. I'm just not as comfortable with how we've articulated. Now, I think the basis of it's all fine, and the explanation's fine, but I would have liked even more, and I'll try and spend more time with you on future things to help do that, rather than expressing my discomfort by the time we get to a hearing. So,
With that, Fran? All those in favor, signify by aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you very much. Mr. Howard, let's clean up what we've got dangling here. Item number 7. We want to do that, or you want to do 7, or you want to just do Gallo and put the other ones off till the next? I don't know who's here for what.
You know, I was advised that the one speaker card that we had for the operator certification item has left. So unless there's any objections or any discussion, I will move adoption of that item.
Second.
I would probably wait and let things settle down, and let's confirm that staff doesn't have anything they need to, not for a presentation, but any items they need to make, but
Staff
also,
is
good.
saying no.
and then you've looked around the room to make sure nobody's throwing their hands up to comment?
Nope.
Okay.
We have a motion and a second.
Aye.
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 Moving on to number 8. Thank you, Mr. Howard. Moving on
Yes,
to
that
item
was a
number 8.
quick decision. Thank you. And item number 8 is draft order denying reconsideration of a state water board order which approved a settlement agreement. And I guess I should probably not be doing this one since I'm the one who signed that order.
You can excuse yourself.
Good afternoon. This will be very short and sweet. I'm Ernie Mona with the Hearings Unit, and this is Michael Buckman, Chief of the Hearings Unit. The draft order denying reconsideration was issued for public comment early in November. We received one written comment from the South Delta Water Authority, and that comment was submitted in support of the board's adoption of the order. We recommend no changes to the draft order. Therefore, unless the board has questions, staff recommends that the board adopt the draft order. Thank you.
I've got two comments. Mr. Rubin, are you able to build just on the amount of time it takes to hear this issue, or do you get standby time? It's all the same?
Oh, really?
Rebecca Ackroyd. Thank you for your patience, by the way.
Thank you. Rebecca Ackroyd on behalf of the San Luis and Delta Mendota Water Authority.
How'd I say your name wrong?
It's Ackroyd.
And I said Ackroyd.
Yeah, it's
Okay, Ackroyd. Okay.
happens all the time.
All right.
We just have two
I
brief,
was thinking of that cheeseburger, I think, is what I was thinking about.
just two brief comments on the draft order. First, wanted to make the point that we agree with the draft order's statement of the legal standard for approval of a settlement, that the state board cannot approve a settlement that is contrary to law or public policy. But we wanted to state our concern that in the absence of citation or evidence in the settlement or order approving settlement, it's basically impossible to judge whether the settlement is contrary to law or public policy. Catch that?
Thanks for that clarity.
So because of that, our second point is that we think the clarification in the draft order that nothing in the settlement or the order approving settlement defines Gallo's water rights or sets precedent for future proceedings is critical. So those are our brief comments, unless you have any questions or clarifying points.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you.
David Rose?
Good afternoon or evening. David Rose on behalf of the Division of Water Rights Prosecution Team. I was going to skip the opportunity to just say that we support the order, but John Herrick asked me to express his regrets that he and Dante Nomalini had to leave and to point you towards their written comments. So you have my comment and theirs. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Any questions of staff on this?
I'll move the item.
Second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Have we worn down Megan Brown and, oh, no, we can't wear down Megan Brown. She's a lacrosse girl. She could do this for 14 hours and not break a sweat.
Should I go ahead?
Yeah, just
Okay, so as you said, my name's Megan Brown. I'm with the Division of Financial Assistance. We had planned to present a short summary of the written fact sheet that we prepared for the meeting agenda, but given that time is so limited right now, we'd be happy to move directly to addressing any comments or questions. Of course, I'm happy to do the 5-minute presentation if that's what your preference is. And that's, I guess, it for now.
I want to hear Debbie Webster come up and say she agrees with us. If you wait long enough.
All right. I told you you'd see a lot of me. Anyways, Debbie Webster with the Central Valley Clean Water Association. I want to tell you a little bit about CVICWA. For those new board members, I think I've told you might have heard this, is that CVICWA represents POTWs in the Central Valley. Out of our membership, which is over 50 POTW agencies, not treatment plants, but agencies, about 2/3 of them are smaller than 10 MGD, and over 1/3 of them are smaller than 1 MGD. We have a significant amount of small agencies. Some of those small agencies have 10 or 12 treatment plants that are associated with them. And so these are very small communities, and that's why you will see me up here advocating for them. I have a passion for small communities. And so I want to first start with really applauding your staff, because they have worked very, very hard in order to look for ways of creating a more friendly situation to get funding for different, not only just the projects they need, but the studies that they need to go through, in order to, for operator certification, in order to try to help address some of those issues. There's been a lot of really good things done. So, and I applaud you two for undertaking this effort. One of the recommendations is is to look at efforts through the resource realignment. So I'm going to go over here so you understand why I'm saying this part. One of the key parts that was brought up in the resource realignment is that we're not going to wait for the resource realignment with the current regulatory framework that we have going forward. We need to keep on moving forward with them. And one of the suggestions that was in the 2011 report that you can click to and is still there and is still important and being slowly implemented is looking how these regulations impact the small communities proactively. So not just come up with a regulation and say, well, there's these ins and outs and they're going to get there and we're going to figure out how we did it, because that's the way we used to do it, and it's part of the reason why we're trying to scramble and make some changes, and we're going through the resource realignment. But you've got a lot of regulatory initiatives that are in the pipeline right now, and I really just urge you both as a board and to your staff to continue to look at what are those impacts that these are going to have on these small communities. Can they afford it? Are there other ways to get that water quality protection that's needed, kind of that smarter, better area, so that those are looked at? And so I will say, you know, the recycled water policy, and I apologize for not being here at that last board meeting where that was discussed and some of the monitoring requirements were discussed, because had I known the conversation was going to go that way, I would have been here. Those types of things where we can find opportunities to help save these communities money that is really not needed to be spent, or ways that we can get things done better or try to promote those programs that we want to do, those are things I really hope this board would look for. And so, again, thank you to staff for this. I just want to put that plug in because it's so important, and I don't want to wait for the resource realignment and get 5 or 6 more policies that then we have to go back and change. So, thanks.
Thank you. Anything else? Sorry you ladies had to wait all day, but with that, we will be adjourned. Thank you all. Thank you to my colleagues as well, particularly on the third to last item. Fish out of water on that one.
No, traffic and so when should I go? Actually, I'm going to go home since I have time. I'm going to go home and change to